Hey folks, Dale Davidson here, the Dear VA guy. Got a little bit something different today. I'm going to go over some scenarios and it has to do with secondary conditions. But anyway, thank you for tuning in today. So let's get going. So here it is. Here's the scenario. You're a veteran who was exposed to Agent Orange. Okay, doesn't matter where, but you were exposed to Agent Orange, maybe in Vietnam, the DMZ, Thailand, wherever it was. Okay, you filed for a presumptive claim for high blood pressure and were denied, or it was granted, but you're rated at a 0%. Okay, what can you do? Do you file a supplemental claim with additional evidence, or do you file a higher level review where you can't file additional evidence? Well, it depends. And let me ask you some questions. And we don't know these, but did the VA adequately consider the severity and functional impact of your other medically linked conditions? Okay, we're going to describe what a medically linked condition to your high blood pressure is in just a minute. Is there another condition that's medically linked to your exposure to Agent Orange? Put it another way. Did the VA fail in its statutory duty, that means lawful duty, to assist you in developing a well-known effect of your chronic hypertension, your chronic high blood pressure, as a secondary service-connected disability? I don't know that answer, okay? Only you know that answer. So let's talk about what is a medically linked condition to hypertension, and we're just hypertension, high blood pressure. And we got some different categories. Let's talk about cardiovascular, which is your heart. That's heart failure, congestive heart failure. We all know what that is. We know what coronary artery disease is, okay? We know what AFib is, and peripheral arterial disease, PAD. So those are cardiovascular system secondary conditions to your high blood pressure. What about neurological system? Okay, strokes, transient ischemic attacks, okay, TIAs. Okay. What about your kidneys? Chronic kidney disease, hyperactive kidneys, those kinds of things. Anything that has to do with that is medically linked to your high blood pressure as it relates to your kidneys. So my dad was an ophthalmologist, and I bet you didn't realize that eye doctors can diagnose a lot of diseases by looking at your eye. The same thing if you've got high blood pressure, your eye or your eye systems can be linked to your high blood pressure as a result of your Agent Orange exposure, okay? Eye bleeding, renal hemorrhages, okay? So those kinds of eye conditions can be linked to your high blood pressure as a result of your Agent Orange. What about your lungs, pulmonary hypertension, shortness of breath, and all those things? Let's kind of overlap with your cardiovascular a little bit, but those can be medically linked to your high blood pressure as a result of your Agent Orange exposures. Diabetes is a very common one. Metabolic syndrome, all of those things are secondary to your high blood pressure as it relates to your exposure to Agent Orange. So in the VA context, the Veteran Administration does recognize secondary conditions such as chronic kidney disease, hypersensitive heart disease, stroke, aneurysms, ED, those kinds of things in determining how your blood pressure affects other parts of your body and your other organs. And your high blood pressure, of course, is a presumptive of your exposure to Agent Orange. So in my scenario, you suffer from chronic hypertension or chronic high blood pressure, okay, which most everybody has today, okay? So High blood pressure is described as your blood flow. Okay, you have a systolic, okay, and a diastolic blood pressure. Okay, now if your systolic number is too high and your diastolic pressure is too high, then you have high blood pressure, and there's different levels of blood pressure there. VA's diagnostic code calls for different treatments depending upon how high your blood pressure is, okay, and how you respond to those treatments. Now, in my scenario, you were rated at a 0, okay, so evidently you responded well to the treatment, okay, but did the VA take into consideration the issues with respect to secondary issues on heart, pulmonary, all of those things we just talked about, those medically linked secondary conditions? Did they take those into account in your rating? I bet they didn't, okay? Again, I'm going to ask you this question, and I think I know what the answer is, and I bet the answer is no. Did the VA consider your historical blood pressure readings in making its decision? I bet they did. I bet they took the most recent ones and made their decisions based upon that, because now you're being treated. Well, the problem is your historical readings impact your secondary medically linked conditions, okay? So your chronic hypertension continued on for many years, resulting in a medically linked condition, coronary heart disease, diabetes, ED, and since your diagnosis, you've been treated and you've responded to that treatment, but the damage is already done, okay? Now, I would suggest that if you haven't been examined by a doctor, that you go get examined by a doctor to make sure that if you've had historically high blood pressure, you think you did, that you get tested for these secondary types of disease to see if you have any kind of damage, because you need to catch this early. If you don't understand what the doctor's saying, Google what they're telling you, and then Google can maybe explain it to you in plain English versus Latin. I only say that because your medically linked condition may often be asymptomatic, means you don't really have any symptoms. You know, you got a early stages and it's slowly progressing, okay? Don't let these medically linked conditions creep up on you, okay? Go get checked today. So when you go to your doctor, ask. Say, look, I have probably had high blood pressure for years. Please tell me what are the conditions that are probably undiagnosed right now that I can get tested for. The VA has a statutory duty to assist you in obtaining medical records, okay? Both VA records and private records. They have a duty to assist you providing VA medical examinations or opinions when necessary to decide your claim. And 3, they have a legal duty to develop theories of entitlement that are reasonably necessary or reasonably raised by the record, including secondary service connection. Pro tip here: the VA knows about these medically linked conditions, medically linked to hypertension, but they're probably not addressing those with you. Make sure they address them in your claim or address them with you. So again, my question is, in your case, did the VA fail to assist you in developing your entitlement to your secondary and medically linked condition, to your chronic hypertension? Did they look at only the historical? Probably not. They probably didn't even look at the historical. Or did they just look at the present readings? That's probably so. Look, your blood pressure being under control, you're rated at a 0. Okay? Remember, medically linked conditions are widely recognized as a secondary condition caused by your long-standing chronic hypertension. Okay? What this means is it's almost always a direct consequence of your chronic, uncontrolled high blood pressure. That is uncontrolled before you got it under control with medications. Okay? So just because it's controlled by your high blood pressure is controlled by medication doesn't mean that you don't qualify for this secondary condition too. Okay? Doesn't mean that. The law allows secondary service connection where your disability is proximately due or aggravated by an existing service-connected disability. High blood pressure. Remember, under the PACT Act, that high blood pressure is a presumptive condition. You may be rated at 0, but you have other secondary conditions, heart conditions, pulmonary conditions, endocrine conditions, whatever it may be, those may be secondary. Don't forget to explore those with the VA. So the Board of Veterans' Appeal has repeatedly held that medically linked conditions qualify under the rule, under the duty to assist rule, when there is medical evidence saying that your injury is caused by your service-connected high blood pressure, your hypertension. In other words, I'm telling you, they have a duty to assist you to develop these medically linked secondary conditions when the record says it's right to do so. Make sure your records say that. Okay? Now, under the law, again, a secondary service connection can be granted for a disability that is, again, approximately due to or aggravated by your service-connected condition. If you have a presumptive disability of hypertension due to your exposure to high blood pressure, and if you have pulmonary or heart or whatever it may be, if those secondary conditions are medically linked to your high blood pressure, then the VA has a duty to assist you in developing that claim. Your secondary claim is basically, it's just an offshoot of your primary claim, but they need to assist you in that, okay? So, as acknowledged by your hypertension, your high blood pressure, your service connection is at 0% in my example, okay, or my scenario, okay. But as a direct and proximate result of your chronic hypertension, you developed, let's say, coronary artery disease, or you've had a stroke, or you have diabetes, whatever it may be. Then the VA is required, we may be, but they're required to consider your secondary condition, okay? Secondary and medically linked condition, and in this case they failed to do that. Okay, in my scenario they failed to do that. So they're supposed to do it, they didn't. So you may be rated a 0 for your hypertension, but that secondary condition, diabetes, coronary heart disease, you may get, I don't know, let's say 50-60%. You could be 100%. It just depends upon the level of injury, because you've got to go onto that rating system at that time. So look, folks, I can't stress enough to y'all that a medically linked condition to a service-connected chronic disease such as hypertension is compensable. It means you can be rated for that and you can receive compensation for that disability. Okay? In my scenario, your service-connected blood pressure, because of your exposure to Agent Orange, because it's presumptive, your medically linked condition should qualify as a secondary service-connected disability under the law, and you should be compensated for it. And I'm telling you, the VA must consider your functional impairment and your secondary condition under the law. Your secondary condition represents a clear manifestation of your injury and damage occasioned by your primary, which in this case was hypertension, disability. Your hypertension, again, presumptive disability under the PACT Act, led to your coronary heart disease or diabetes or whatever that is. So they've got to take that in consideration in awarding you or developing this secondary condition as a service-connected disability. Hey folks, Dale Davidson here. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope this video was very informative. Hey, check out this video I did called VA High Blood Pressure Claims. Don't forget secondary conditions for additional information.